Hello and welcome to CinemaBurger. I'm Scott Berger and I bring you movie reviews from a different perspective. We start off this month with our viewer choices, and for the top third spot for comedy, the winner is Meet Dave. So we're going to talk about Meet Dave today. Meet Dave came out in 2008 and stars Eddie Murphy, Gabrielle Union, Elizabeth Banks, and Ed Helms. It's about aliens from the planet of Nil who arrive on Earth in a spaceship that is the size of regular adult Eddie Murphy. Everyone inside the ship are tiny humanoid looking creatures, but they're basically humans, just small. They've come to Earth to take their water supply because the planet Nil is in need of it. But they have to learn human customs and interactions. Now, Eddie Murphy also plays the captain of the ship that looks like Eddie Murphy, so he's playing two parts. So, as the ship, he is controlled from the inside and must imitate human interactions and emotions and characteristics. And this is probably where the funniest part of the movie is. As the ship walks through the streets of New York, he's imitating human gestures like smiling, and it's incredible Eddie Murphy's performance because of how robotic he is being. When he's trying to smile, he tries to figure it out. He's like this. And he's just being mesmerized by everyday things that regular humans are accustomed to. So when he's walking the streets, he gets hit by a car, and Elizabeth Banks is inside the car. She plays a single mom named Gina with a 10-year-old son. Now, this is the first time Eddie Murphy has had to speak to anyone so far. So when he answers, they put his pitch too high and it breaks glass around him, and then he tries it lower and they use all of the bass in the universe, and it's pretty funny because you've never heard someone talk with that much bass. It sounds like a robot. Now, the people of Nil don't use their emotions a lot, so they see humans as barbaric giants. Ed Helms especially, as he plays the number 2 in command. Now, Gina brings the ship back to her apartment and gives the ship a glass of water. So, this is the first time we see inside the mouth of the ship, and it looks like a real set. And it's nice to see an actual built set with CG enhancements instead of just a completely CG effect that looks fake. So you can tell that the people are inside what looks like a giant mouth. Now, when Gina brings the ship back to her apartment, also, since they don't have a name, Gina asks what his name is, and in the computer they look up the most common name on Earth, and they say Ming Chang, which is hilarious because since China makes up about 2 billion people on Earth, that would be the most common name. And Gina says, "Oh, you kind of struck me as a Dave." So he's like, "Oh, yes, that's my other name." So his name is Dave Ming Chang, which is clever enough, but is it racist because he says an Asian name? But they do make up a majority of the Earth's population, and since they're looking up based on statistics, it's a fact that Asian people make up most of the Earth. So now the ship is dressed in all white, and whenever he walks by, kids think he's the ice cream man. So he has to get regular clothes, and this coming up is probably the funniest scene in the movie. So he goes to Old Navy, and the person at the door greets him, and he thinks that this is a ritual greeting. So Eddie Murphy makes the ship keep saying "Welcome to Old Navy." He'll walk up to random people and like whisper it to them, like "Welcome to Old Navy," and he'll just say it in different octaves and tones, and it's the best scene. When I saw this in theaters, I was laughing on the floor, and so was my friend. Now, another employee asks him if he needs help looking for something, and since they're still not accustomed to Earth greetings and customs, that he says, "I am obviously the same size as everyone else." Now, this is reminding everyone in the retail business of every single Karen customer or type, especially when he says, "I am obviously the same size as everyone else." So when he tries on a shirt, he's like trying to put his head through the sleeve, and the people working the arms in the ship are trying to figure it out. And he falls on a table of clothes, and it's hilarious. It's probably also the most realistic way of trying to pilot a giant robot, because you're not going to know everything about it immediately. You're going to have trouble. So as he gets his head over one sleeve, the robot says, "Yes, this is my size. Welcome to Old Navy." And it's the best. Oh, so since they don't have any Earth money, they go to the bathroom and the ship literally poops out money. And Eddie Murphy has this smile throughout the movie like this. So as he's pooping out the money, he needs to make coins, so he makes like a squirming face. And as several coins fall to the floor, and then he makes his signature smile again. And it's funny for children, and I think adults can enjoy this too. While most of the comedy comes from the aliens trying to figure out human customs, there is a family-friendly, like, love interest plot, because Gina falls for the ship, not realizing that it's a bunch of aliens inside. Now, along with the ship, there's an orb that came to Earth with them that has the ability to suck up all the moisture from the planet. And when they crash, they lose it, and it ends up in Gina's son's backpack. So they end up befriending Gina and the son to try to get the orb back. Now, throughout Dave's interaction with Gina and her son, the people of the ship start to develop human emotions and customs as they listen to Earth's music. And another one, played by Pat Kilbane from Mad TV, he's portrayed as a very tough individual because he's the head of security. But when number 3, played by Gabriel Union, goes to his quarters, she sees that he has very effeminate looking stuff in his room. He has leopard skin bed sheets, he has bead curtains, and he has what was considered then the stereotypical homosexual looking person. Now, this is 2008, but it's still very stereotypical and offensive by today's standards, and just in general. Like, what if someone is just in touch with his feminine side? Doesn't mean he's gay, and if he is, he's doing all of the stereotypical homosexual things, like he's a hairdresser, and he's talking with snapping his fingers, and it does not hold up at all. It's kind of takes out of the movie for a minute. Now, at one point, Gina takes Dave out to dinner because she's starting to fall for him, because back at their apartment there's a picture of a military person, which was Gina's late husband, so she's a widow. And they talk about going to a restaurant, and the son says, "Oh, I know a good salsa place." Like, why would a 10-year-old know a good salsa restaurant? You just walking the streets of New York by yourself? And since Dave has no place to sleep, he just kind of sleeps on the street, and there's a homeless man he's sitting next to, and the homeless man offers him a blanket and is nice to him. I'm like, this may be considered stereotypical, but any homeless person I've seen in New York City is kind of ranting or dirty. Not that that's all of them, but this looked like a very clean homeless person, so that's a little hard to believe. So another one of Dave and Gina's activities with the son is going to a hot dog eating contest. Now, once again, when they show the inside of Dave's mouth, they show their computerized hot dogs going in, but the set around it is real. So he eats about 70 hot dogs. As he's putting them in his mouth, you can tell they're computer effect, but it doesn't look that bad for back then. But after they finish the contest, Dave says to Gina, "If you'll excuse me, my colon is impacted." And he thinks that's a sincere gesture, but it's just gross. So as he's going to the bathroom, someone inside is pulling a lever to let out the hot dogs, but it just sounds like he's pooping for like 10 minutes. Once again, kid humor, because this is made for children. Now, the story between Dave and Gina getting together feels very by the numbers, like you don't really believe their love story. And that's when you get taken out of the movie, in my opinion. Because the movie's all about aliens inside of a ship that looks like a human. And yes, they need something else to pad out the movie, but some of the jokes don't hold up in this movie, and the love story is just kind of overdone and generic. So while at the amusement park where they ate all the hot dogs, Dave is playing the batting cage where he has to throw the ball to hit the bottles, and he throws it so far it bounces back and hits him in the head. Now, when someone is looking in his eyes with the little flashlight, Ed Helms is like, "The sun is exploding in my face," because they've never seen a light that big other than their own sun. So that was a pretty funny joke, too. So now, number two, played by Ed Helms, is fed up with everyone on the ship acting like human beings and not focusing on the mission, because the captain still takes out Gina even though they have the orb at this point. So he hijacks the ship and with a mutiny to go do their mission, even though the captain realizes that humans are worth saving. So once they do that, they throw the captain and number three out of Dave's nose, and they fall to the ground. Now, they should be dead based on the height of them falling, because they're about the size of, let's say, like cockroaches, and they're falling from about a 5'10" distance. You'd think they would die, but they're fine. That's the only instance in this movie where, like, physics is not correct to say. Because you think about it, like, you drop an ant from a table's height and it lands, but ants have a different body structure than humans, so you think a tiny human would just die. So that's a little questionable if they live or not, but... So when Gina and the son realize that Dave is actually a spaceship piloted by tiny people, and that they have to leave Earth because they've stopped number two from taking over and destroying Earth, they fly away, and the world is saved, and Gina seems pretty okay with it. Now, having your husband die in combat, and then the next guy you date turns out to be a spaceship for tiny aliens, you're gonna need some serious therapy to get over that. Like, you're not gonna be okay. So overall, how does Meet Dave hold up, now 12 years after its release? All the funniest jokes are still the aliens trying to understand human customs and emotions and understanding planet Earth. The family plot about Gina and Dave being together feels a little generic and doesn't hold up that well. There's a couple of jokes that are not politically correct, like portrayal of homosexual people. While this movie is great for kids, little kids will enjoy this. Adults may get bored at times, especially during the second half of the movie, I think, because there's less of the people of Nil trying to understand human emotions and then just dealing with the internal conflict of whether they should steal all of Earth's water to take back to their planet. This movie does feature a lot of comedians before they were really famous, like Kevin Hart and Judah Friedlander and Brian Husky. You may know him from the If Google Was a Guy videos on College Humor. So after all of that, I would give Meet Dave a 2.5 out of 5 burgers, because of certain things that don't hold up, and the funniest jokes are in about the first half of the movie. Now, even though this movie is an hour and a half, near the end it feels like it's dragging. And while little kids will enjoy this movie, some adults may find trouble enjoying this. But of course, the movie does have good morals and a good message for children, and Eddie Murphy's performance as the ship is incredible. It's one of his best body language and facial expressions without half the time even saying anything. Alright, I'm Scott Berger, and next time we'll talk about the number 3 sci fi movie. I'll see you next time.